Hello everyone and welcome to Over the Rainbow, an LGBTQ plus podcast dedicated to queer education and queer representation. I'm your host, Rachel Keighley, and I use she, her pronouns. In today's episode, we're going to be exploring coming out as LGBTQ plus. And today I've got a really awesome guest. It's my really good friend, Jules. And yeah, they are awesome. So we're going to be sharing bits of our personal stories with coming out, whilst also addressing the general process, like what happens when you have to come out to yourself, when you have to come out to others, the challenges and the barriers that come with that. Yeah, and also we'll share some resources for anyone who maybe is at the start or halfway through their journey of coming out, and hopefully some of this stuff will help them. Right, let's get on with the show. Hi, Jules. Welcome to the show.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. Given you're going to be a sort of regular guest / co-host, do you want to just introduce yourself to the listeners?
Sure. Hi, I'm Jules. I'm 28 years old and I'm from Germany. I'm currently a uni student, English major and German literary minor, hopefully graduating soon, fingers crossed. And and Rachel and I have been friends for 6.5 years now, I think.
You did the maths quicker than me, something like that.
Oh, hey.
I was like,
as a language major, I can still do math. Awesome.
Yes. Do you want to do your pronouns as well?
Sure, of course. Yeah. I use they, them pronouns.
Awesome. And as you all know, I use she, her pronouns. Just want to normalize sharing our pronouns with each other so we don't assume other people's gender. Okay, cool. So this is the first episode, but what I like to do is to start the podcast episodes with something that we've done this week, either to engage in queer activism or queer education. So do you want to go first or do you want me to go first?
You can go first. Go ahead.
Okay, cool. Mine is going to be a little bit of a cheat this week, but it is important and it's the first episode, but I have launched this podcast and I think that is completely relevant. So I've spoken about my reasons why I've launched this podcast in a sort of introductory episode, but this is the proper first episode. But I won't repeat myself too much, but just I wanted to be a part of the movement to educate on LGBTQ plus identity, whilst also creating a safe space for LGBTQ plus people to share their stories, their triumphs, their struggles, and to also share resources with each other so we can all sort of learn and support each other together. And one of the other things I really want to do is tackle many of the barriers and struggles that LGBTQ plus people face in their day-to-day lives. So hopefully this podcast will do just that, and we'll all constantly learn things about identity, about ourselves, and about each other along the way. That is the hope. Fingers crossed. So what have you done this week?
I'm not sure. I hope this is relevant. I mean, I think it is. I actually last weekend had a very, very interesting conversations with a few friends about gender identity and sexuality and all that. And there were a lot of things they weren't quite aware of. And so I tried to sort of give them a deeper insight into all of that, try to explain a few things, hopefully provide some advice and all of that. And I think that was actually a pretty cool thing to do.
No, it definitely is. It definitely is, because a lot of people are scared to ask the questions, aren't they? And equally, a lot of people are scared to answer the questions.
Absolutely. Yeah. But I think if it all happens with or out of respect, then it's totally fine.
Yeah, could not agree more. Amazing. That was a great example. So I guess we'll start the episode. And today we're going to talk about the process of coming out. So what that means, what that entails. We'll maybe touch upon some of the common challenges, especially given the pressures of living in a heteronormative cisgender society that does add a lot of unnecessary stress on the journey of figuring out your sexuality or your gender identity and then having to come out as a result of these societal pressures. And also we'll discuss some of the positives and helpful resources for anyone who might need them, or anyone who might want to share them with their LGBTQ plus peers and allies. So does that sound good?
Awesome.
Yeah.
I'm in.
Amazing.
I wouldn't be here otherwise, so
this
obviously
is true.
I'm in.
Yeah. You're like, oh no, this wasn't what I signed up for. Sorry.
Where am I? What kind of podcast is this? Who are you?
Yeah. Yeah, so amazing. So we'll start with the process of coming out. So what it is, why is it such a big thing? So to me, I think I understand coming out in the context of being LGBTQ plus to be sort of twofold. It's something where you come out to yourself. So it's a part of yourself that you are discovering. Maybe there are people obviously who've known it their entire lives ever since they were young, and this definitely was not the case for me. So when I reached about the age
for me, it was
awesome. That is amazing. I wish it was for me.
Still a very, very long journey though to actually get to the point where I became aware of it and then accepted it eventually. That took a long time.
Yeah, it does. It's not an instantaneous thing, is it? But it's a thing of coming out to yourself. It's a process of self-discovery, discovering these aspects of yourself and being able to define them for yourself. And that journey, like you just said, can take a really, really long time, whether that's because you just don't know or because of certain external factors. I mean, there are a myriad of reasons, but there's that process of coming out. And then I also think, sadly, it shouldn't be necessary, but there is a process of coming out to others. You feel like once you've figured this stuff out for yourself, whether you should or shouldn't have, you've got an obligation. Feels like you have an obligation.
You kind of owe it to other people to come out to them, even though that's actually like really, really problematic, just the concept in and of itself.
Exactly. Yeah. Especially when you think about how cisgender straight people do not have to come out ever, but we do.
Exactly. And we all just assume, okay, hey, if you don't say otherwise, I'm gonna assume you're hetero.
Yeah.
Even though obviously it doesn't have to be the case. In so many cases, it is not actually the truth.
Exactly. It's not even like even this wouldn't make it right, but it's not even like a 99% majority are heterosexual. You could almost forgive it if it was, because then it's a dangerous assumption, but safer. Whereas that's just, I don't know off the top of my head, but I do know that with each generation, more and more people are coming out as LGBTQ plus. So the distribution is going to be more equal across the different identities.
Absolutely.
So if we start, I guess I want to share a little bit about like the process of coming out to yourself, because I think that is where people start, isn't it? And that's
yes, absolutely. Whether you're aware of it or not, and whether you're ready to face that part of yourself or not, it will happen at some point.
Yeah, it will hit you like a ton of bricks if it hasn't early on.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And that can be really, really scary, which is why I think having something like this podcast and having resources that are out there to say, like, it's okay is really important. And from the outset, I really want to emphasize that journey is so unique to everyone, every single part of it, whether it's what we've already discussed in terms of the time you figure it out in your life or how long it takes you to answer the questions, whether you ever answer them.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's so complex. And quite often I think people look externally for answers to try and match what they're feeling inside.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Media, for example, I think plays a huge role. Sometimes celebrities, they can also be really, really important.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, I know it was like that for me. Like for me, it was like, I mean, I guess that sounds kind of cliche, but it was Ellen DeGeneres that sort of gave me that push, and where I was like, I kind of identify with that, actually. I see myself in her.
Feel an affinity, don't you? Yeah.
Exactly. Or our generation, when it comes to shipping, for example, and then suddenly you see a gay or lesbian couple or just queer couple in general, and you're like, you know what? Yeah, hetero couples, nah, not so much, but those two, I'm into it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly how it happened to me. I mean, I was 20, and it seems so embarrassing to share, but like it shouldn't be, it's not. But yeah, it was literally watching Orange is the New Black, and it was seeing the main couple on that show and thinking, whoa, this is what my life has been missing. This is what I want for myself, and I haven't seen this before. Awesome. Yeah, it's exciting because I grew up in, like, I went to a Catholic school. I grew up being told that, like, a man and a woman have to get married, and that's your life, and that's always going to be your life. And I was seeing all my friends talk about, like, boys they liked at school, which obviously is, like, completely innocent and fine for them, but I never felt, it caused me so much anxiety, but I could never understand why, because I was never given the room in a Catholic school to explore an alternative.
Yeah. And them asking, do you have a boyfriend yet? And then whenever you answer, no, I don't, or sometimes even making up like a fake boyfriend or something just to get them off your back.
Yeah. It's like feeling that you have to fit into that box, and then feeling like you have to answer that question anyway.
Yeah, exactly. And it makes you so unhappy. And you may not actually realize yet why that is the case, but you just know it's like the worst feeling.
Yeah. And I think what you just said there is, like, you've hit the nail on the head. It's like, not that you don't even know it yourself. And I think half the time it's because society does not give us the room to know these things. They give us the tools to know what it means to be cisgender, and they give us the tools to know what it means to be heterosexual, and that's it. So if you are not lucky,
the birds and the bees.
Yeah, exactly. If you're not lucky enough to be exposed to the other alternative identities which exist and are perfectly valid, how could your mind possibly make that jump, other than to think there's something really wrong with me because I don't feel like I fit into society?
Exactly. Yeah. That really is a huge problem, which I think still hasn't changed all that much. I mean, I think we, especially our generation, I think we do start to think differently, and we start to have a different awareness and even grow up with a different kind of awareness. But it is still really hard to just kind of break out of this rut that you've experienced your whole life, and like all of this input, all of this mostly heteronormative input that you get, and to just be like, no, you know what, this is not me, and you know what, I'm proud of that. I don't want to be that, I don't want to fit in, but that takes such a long time.
Exactly, yeah, because you do feel like not only are you figuring out your identity, you feel like as a result of that you are expelling yourself from society, which you are, and you shouldn't be. That absolutely shouldn't be the case, but society dictates that if you don't fit into the box, you're off way down the ladder of sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? You're not on top anymore. The hierarchy, that is the word. Thank you. Wow.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, you are further down in the hierarchy, and who wants to push themselves down that ladder? They don't. No one does. And
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think that's a big reason why so many people hide for so long.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, I mean, for me, speaking from my personal experience, it was also always this wait for, hey, maybe this is just a phase. Maybe I can fit in. Maybe this isn't actually me. I was like just so unsure of myself and who I was, and even what kind of language to use to describe myself. I think that's also a very important thing, to just actually have that language to identify with.
Definitely. And it makes it that much harder, doesn't it, if you don't have that language, or if you feel like you can somehow save yourself, in inverted commas, by like just telling yourself it's just a phase, I'll be able to fit in with the norm, when really, like, what is the norm? You go outside and you throw a stone. I mean, you won't throw a stone, but you know, you go outside and you hit 5 people, and they're going to be so different in so many aspects of their identity, that actually, what is this norm that we've been taught to fit into? Because it doesn't actually exist.
Yeah, that is so true.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's mainly about just, I mean, when we speak about norms, it's basically just, I guess, the majority in a way. Basically just what society has always believed in, definitely about power relations and all of that, who's in charge, and It's just, I think it's great to see that there is a shift happening now.
100%.
That is so important.
Yeah, it's going to be really exciting to see where that shift goes, but it's obviously going to be met with pushback. So it's about continuing with this journey and pushing back against the pushback, like not letting them take us back into the dark. Like, we want to say and we will have a say.
Yeah, exactly. Like you're doing with this podcast.
Yeah.
So, yay.
Yeah, yes. Amazing. Yeah. So yeah, I guess the main question is, I think you'll always have to come out to yourself if we're talking about coming out. I think that is something that's always going to be absolutely
the first
critical thing. Yeah, I don't think that is ever something I'd want to change. I think I would always have wanted to come out to myself. But the thing I struggle with when talking about coming out is why we have to come out to society in the way we do. Like, I understand I want to share who I am with people, but it's the impact that coming out as LGBTQ plus has on people currently. It's not a nice experience, and it could be.
Absolutely, it could be fatal. I mean, in some countries, in some societies, in some cultures, you can get sent to prison for that.
Yeah, exactly. And worse, there are a few countries where there's still the death penalty.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it has massive repercussions.
Just on that note, I'm so sorry.
No.
But here in Germany, this May is when we actually started making conversion therapy illegal, just a few months ago. So up until then, conversion therapy was actually legal in this country, which is just mind-blowing.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very similar journey here in the UK. We've had lots of protests and petitions to stop conversion therapy within the UK because I believe it still is legal in the UK. It's terrifying, isn't it? Like,
basically the same terrifying situation.
Yeah, we think that we've made progress, and we have, like, credit where credit's due, but there are still massive barriers, dangerous consequences to coming out. And with that, not even just the dangerous consequences, it's just that society expects when you come out, society expects you to have a firm answer and to be able to justify.
Right? Like a clear cut, okay, this is who I am. Like, I love this person or this person, but that can never change. Absolutely not. Like, oh no.
Yeah. And then to be able to justify it with reasons. And it's like, I literally can't explain this part of myself other than that I know it's who I am. Like,
I know, right? Like, all of these questions, like, are you sure? Why do you think you're queer?
Yeah.
And like, because it's how I feel, it's who I am. You have to justify why you're hetero?
Exactly. You can't point to like a physical, tangible thing. It's how you feel, and that is...
It's just you as a person. Like, everything that makes you, that's just what it is.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the best ways to turn it back on people who sort of demand an answer to why you're LGBTQ is, well, like, why are you straight? Why are you cisgender? How do you know? And they're not going to be able to answer. If they can, I would like to hear that answer.
I know, right? I mean, I would actually be genuinely interested in that. But I've never heard it before. So
no, I think it was safe to say it doesn't exist. But I think that just adds so much more pressure because people feel like as they figured this out for themselves, and maybe they haven't completely figured it out, but they feel like they want some external support. So they want to tell their family, they maybe want to tell their friends, but it's like, how do I tell them now? Because these questions are going to come back to me. And also, what if, because I'm not so sure yet, what if it changes? Like, do I have to now pigeonhole myself as, say, a lesbian woman for the rest of my life because that's what I'm coming out as?
Exactly.
Like, is sexuality and gender really that static?
Which, I mean, in my opinion, definitely
yeah,
not.
100% no.
It can, like, there's a certain fluidity to it, I believe. And I also think that the more time passes and the more you actually start embracing your true self, and also the more aware you become, because I think it's also a lot about knowledge. Just having the knowledge of what's out there and what's possible, just emotionally and all of that. I think that definitely plays a huge part as well. I mean, for me, I know it did, because I've been out as queer 8 years now, I think. But it was only recently, over the past few months, that I actually realized, hey, I'm non-binary. And it was only a few days ago that I came out as non-binary to you. So it takes time, and it's just a constant journey of just finding yourself.
Exactly, yeah. And I think the fact that there are these barriers and these fears will certainly have lengthened that journey for you. I mean, it may still have been a lengthy one internally anyway, but I don't think having these societal pressures it definitely won't have quickened the pace up. It will have meant that you had to add X number of months, years on to figure it out.
Absolutely. Because I also have to say, like, up until about maybe 2 years ago, I hadn't even really gotten into this whole gender identity thing and like really asking myself these sorts of questions. So I think it's just visibility. That's one of the most important things.
100%. Yeah, it's like, so growing up Catholic again, I obviously knew what being gay meant. Fair enough, the definitions that I was exposed to will have been discriminatory and very narrow-minded, but I could have given a definition. I had absolutely no idea that gender was not binary. Absolutely no idea. Not a clue.
Same.
Yeah.
And I didn't even grow up in a Catholic environment. No. So, but still.
I think it's even less spoken about than sexuality, and it's no less important. Like, it's a fundamental part of who every single one of us are. We all fall somewhere on a spectrum of sexuality and gender. Whether that place that we occupy moves, doesn't matter. We are all somewhere on there. So it's not fair if we're not speaking about the fact that identity is fluid.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I also think it is just so frustrating to see how many people still think sexuality, or even sex, sexuality, and gender are just all the same thing. Just so important to actually make that difference and also explain to people why it is so important to do that.
Yeah, exactly. And it just seems so intuitive when you think about it. Like, if you are a straight, so heterosexual, cisgendered person, you completely know that your gender is one thing and your sexuality is another. So why, when someone comes out to you as, say, non-binary or trans, for example, does a common question that seems to occur for these people is, oh, does that mean you're gay as well? Does that mean you're straight? And it's like, well,
it has nothing to do with one another.
Exactly, yeah. And it's so important to keep it separate for the person figuring these things out for themselves, but also just in general for you being able to support them. You need to know that
just
they're separate.
Understanding that.
And not having these strange double standards where, and I know this does not speak for everyone's experiences, but not having these strange double standards where if your child came out as gay, that's fine. But if your child came out as trans or non-binary, that's not fine. It's like, well, why? Like, what makes...
Like, what's the difference?
Yeah. What makes one so much more acceptable than the other when they're all aspects of a person's identity?
Exactly. But I think there's also still just a lot of misconceptions about that out there. Like, I mean, so far I'm out to all the people I know what gender identity is all about. But if I just, as an example, had to talk about this to my grandparents, which, I mean, eventually I will, because I want to, because I just want to own this part of myself completely. But honestly, right now, I couldn't even say how I would start that conversation. Like, I don't know how to explain that to 80-plus-year-olds, and just just try to teach them basically about what gender identity is, what sexuality is, what the difference is. That's really, really hard to do. And that is something that really takes some time to figure out.
Exactly, it's a mammoth task. And I think, I mean, it's particularly harder with the older generations, like you say, but I think it's a reflection of trying to educate society using language that they understand, when half the language we're trying to use they either don't understand or don't want to understand.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it is a massive barrier, because you need to obviously come down to their level. I don't mean intellectually like they're inferior, but get on a playing field where they know what you're talking about, but then they need to be receptive and responsive to that language. And it's hard, and it's hard to have to ask us to do that over something that just shouldn't be an issue,
that we shouldn't even really have to explain.
Yeah. And I don't yet have an answer to that, other than trying to start the conversations where you can and where you feel safe and comfortable to do so. And it might not be a one-time conversation. It might be a having to come back to people with different resources, different language, until they can meet you somewhere in the middle. But
absolutely. And also how receptive they are.
Yeah, it is a big ask. Like, society puts a big pressure on everyone who has to come out, because they have to justify themselves, and they have to do it in an environment where maybe it's not safe for them to do it. Like, I was very, very lucky. Everyone I came out to was absolutely amazing. They didn't ask how I knew, why I knew, what I was, other than that I knew I wasn't heterosexual, and it was causing me a lot of grief and upset and anxiety, because I had hidden this part of myself from myself so well for so long. It was traumatizing, but I was lucky in that's sort of where my trauma ended for the people that mattered to me. Whereas obviously,
that is amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing, but not everyone sadly has that experience, do they?
That is true. I mean, I didn't. From like with my family, it was kind of 50-50. My mom was super cool about it. She was basically already waiting for me to just come out, and she just gave me a hug, and she was like, "Yeah, I love you." And but with my dad, it was very, very hard. Like, he would throw a lot of very, very just derogatory comments at me. Like, even way before I came out, he would flat out ask me, um, are you gay? I hope you're not gay. You can't be gay. Please don't ever come out as gay. And he would just say like so many just incredibly, incredibly hurtful things. And I mean, when I did come out, he didn't say a word. He just looked at me and walked away. And it was like that for quite a long time. And then he actually did start coming around a little bit. But I mean, even nowadays, he still sometimes looks at me and asks me, "Hey, why don't you dress more girly?" Which is, I mean, very problematic in its own way. And like, he's okay with it now. But I think just the fact that I am different from what I guess he imagined me to grow up as, it's still hard for him, and he still definitely struggles with that.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, that must have been really, really difficult for you. It's
Yeah.
knowing that was going to be the response is hard, isn't it?
I mean, I definitely saw it coming, so I try to emotionally prepare myself for it. But I mean, it still was very, very painful. But now I'm not trying to change his mind anymore. I'm just trying to be myself, and just hoping that he can accept that completely at one point.
And sometimes it does, as hard as it is, it gets to that stage, doesn't it, where you can't break yourself down for someone who doesn't want to understand.
Exactly. And I think that's also something that's very important to remember. Like, it gets easier, it gets better, and the more sure you become of yourself and who you truly are, and the more you embrace that, the more you won't care about what other people think about you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You need to be patient with that process, because obviously at the beginning you won't feel that confident. It's all about self-love and acceptance of yourself, and knowing that the way you are, the way you feel is completely valid, and you are not in the wrong. And then being able to come out in those environments will be that little bit easier. Yes, you'll still have that negative reaction from friends, family, parents, but as long as you know that that negative reaction is not going to endanger your life, because that is a whole other problem, then yeah, you'll find that strength to be true to yourself, or at least get yourself to a safe space, find your people who you can be true to yourself with, even if that's not in your home, school, etc.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that, I think, is also very important, just to kind of be out, to be sort of visible, to just have yourself, to be able to put yourself out there and just go look for peers who will understand you and embrace you exactly the way you are. And I mean, you will find those people, absolutely. It's just this whole journey of, you just have to get to that point where you can accept it for yourself, and you have the courage to also live like that, and actually just just basically living out loud.
Yeah, exactly. And it's I keep thinking about my journey and how lucky I was, and then just thinking about like the absolute, it's just so important in society that we create safe spaces, safe environments for people who cannot come out in the way that I did, or even to a certain extent in the way you did whilst you did have a negative reaction. Then it's so important for people who are just going to be unsafe at home to have that space to explore their identity, their sexuality, and be themselves. And the rest of us who are safe will fight the fight that needs to be fought to make everybody safe, no matter where they live. But it's sadly not going to happen overnight. But that doesn't therefore mean that those people have to be left in the dark and left behind with no safe allies whilst we're pushing for this equality.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it is definitely changing, I think.
Yeah, we see it all the time, and we need to ride that change, that momentum that change causes, to continue to knock down further barriers. We don't want it to get static and slow down. We don't want people to get complacent and think, oh well,
absolutely, like we've gotten to this point, what else can we do, or something. There's always something we can do.
Yeah, exactly. And this goes for all aspects of identity. It's not just being LGBTQ plus, but obviously that's what we are speaking about today.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so I thought it'd be really important, whilst this list is never going to be exhaustive, obviously, hopefully there'll be people that have come to this podcast who are figuring out their identity. Maybe they don't feel ready to come out to their friends or family. Maybe they can't for whatever reason. And in those cases, I think it's so important that we highlight the amazing resources that are out there. Do you want to start? Is there anything either in Germany or just in general on the internet?
There is one in Germany. It's called enough.eu. And it's a great place which has so many amazing links for places and organizations offering advice and support to LGBTQ plus people, no matter your age. They're, I think it's even like the biggest organization here who offer that. And it's just so inclusive of all identities. And yeah, it's like the place that I immediately thought of when I thought about this.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. That sounds very similar to our Stonewall, which is essentially it's a massive UK-based charity, an organisation that not only does research into LGBTQ plus issues, but also offers vast amounts of resources, whether that's just you reading through information and absorbing that in your own time, to like directions to counselling services and local services, whether that's NHS based or private based. Another really good one is mermaidsuk.org.uk that specialises in gender identity, which I have no experience with myself, but very similar in that there's copious amounts of resources on there for people to access and use, obviously all free, which is very important.
Mhm.
And one that I just really stands out for me that I would have loved to have known about when I was younger is the proudtrust.org. So it's a website that, and I think Stonewall offers a similar sort of thing, but it's a website where you can put in your postcode and then it comes up with LGBTQ youth groups and young persons groups across the UK. So you can find the ones. Honestly, it's, if I had known that existed. Yeah, because people can go whether they are out to their parents or not, as long as they have the facilities to get there. And it's just, I mean, I volunteered at an LGBT centre in their youth groups, and it was just amazing seeing these kids being able to be themselves and safely explore identity with absolutely no constraints whatsoever.
That is incredible.
Yeah, like it's something schools should be telling everyone exists. Yeah. 100%. Like I can't say enough good things about it. It's it's just amazing. Like
that is incredible.
Yeah. Other than that, in terms of support networks, I feel like places like this podcast, and I'm going to try and make it as accessible as possible in terms of like, if anyone has any more questions, they should definitely private message the Instagram page, which is @_over-the-rainbow podcast, because like there's obviously, you can't fit everyone's experiences into a short episode, and if ever anyone has any questions or suggestions or comments, then
or just share things with us. Like that's totally amazing. That would be so amazing.
Yeah, it would. People being comfortable enough to reach out to us, whether that's for help or to sort of educate us on something that maybe we haven't mentioned.
Just make their voices heard.
Exactly. We all have our own voice, and whilst we're trying to share as many voices as we can, there's never going to be enough. So
no, that is true.
And it's not just our podcast. People should feel like they can reach out to anyone who's LGBTQ plus, who they feel is out and is in a position to offer them help. Don't be afraid.
Exactly. That's actually when I told a friend of mine about our podcast, he was immediately like, oh, you have to send me your very first episode, and I'm gonna give that to my 14-year-old daughter, who actually came out as bi recently. And I was like, oh my God, thank you so much. That means so much to me.
Exactly. It's amazing. Like I've similar stories, like people saying, oh, when can I share this? Who can I share it with? And it's just, there are so many resources out there that need to be shared. And it isn't just this podcast. We need to be able to share everything we come across so that everyone has as many resources as possible to help them. And then they can choose which ones work best for them, whether it's a mix or just one thing.
Yeah, and internationally, that's always amazing too.
Yeah, exactly. International collaborations, because this is not something where in the future we want Germany to be slightly ahead of the UK or the United States to be
Brexit.
Yeah, literally. Oh God, don't even.
Don't start.
We don't want it to be that Germany has more rights for LGBTQ plus people than the UK.
Absolutely not.
Every single country, this needs to be blanket equality everywhere. And I know that's easier said than done, but that's why we need to collaborate and have conversations.
Exactly.
Those who are further along can educate those who are further behind, and we can all learn from each other.
Yeah. That's like a perfect way to put it.
Thank you. Well, sometimes I'm like, oh, has that made sense? But yes, maybe it has. People might need to translate, but
Don't worry. I got it.
Excellent. Yeah. So to finish off with, I mean, this is, again, everyone's coming out journey is so unique, but do you have any sort of top tips for, not necessarily for coming out externally, but just for the process of discovering that you are LGBTQ plus?
I think, especially thinking back to how I was treating myself while I was going through this, I would say just be kind to yourself. Just really take your time. Don't force yourself to do anything or say anything you're not ready for. Just really, this is, I mean, like we've said so many times now, this is your journey and it's unique. It's individual for all of us. There's no particular deadline or anything like that. Yeah, I think that's what I would say. It's the most important thing. Just be kind to yourself.
Yeah, that's literally amazing, and took the words right out of my mouth.
Thank
I made
you.
yeah, you're welcome. I made like a little note to myself for my top tip for coming out, and then I was like, oh, Jules has just said it. Cool. maybe that's why it's so perfect. Yeah, like as you said, I'll reiterate, this is how important it is. Like, it's your journey. You make the rules, or there are no rules like to identity. You know, it's your own thing.
Absolutely.
You don't need to put yourself in a box, or if you do want to put yourself in a box, because that does help some people, you don't have to stay in that box, and you don't have to give reasons why you're in that box or why you're moving from that box. Just like, you figure it out for you. At the end of the day, that is the most important thing. You owe it to yourself to understand yourself, and the rest of society will have to catch up, and we will make them catch up.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Until then, you're amazing just the way you are. So we love you.
I love you guys too.
Yeah.
I mean, I know you said we, but I just kind of wanted to slide that in there.
Yeah, no, just emphasize the point. I love it. Yeah. All right. So yeah, thank you for listening today, everyone. We'll put at the end of the episode notes all the resources that we've mentioned today, just in case you can't remember what we've said. And equally, please do reach out if there's anything you want us to clarify, or if you need any extra help, or if you have any suggestions for something we didn't touch upon today, because obviously this is such a complex issue.
We can always do like a 2.0 kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah. So
to be continued.
Boom. Let's finish that way. Thank you so much for listening, and I really hope you enjoyed today's show. New episodes are available every Wednesday, so please do download, subscribe, and share with everyone you know. If you have any suggestions or feedback, please leave those in a comment or contact the podcast on Instagram. The Instagram handle is @_overtherainbowpodcast, or on Facebook @overtherainbowpodcast13. Have a great week, and I'll speak to you all soon.